It's Gamers Weekend Gaming with two people who are definitely alive. Yippee!
Yo, October is long gone, okay? No more Day of the Dead. Be alive.
Uh-huh.
I said to
Yes.
Leah in like the in the green room, like she needs to be at least 20% more energetic because this is the YouTube one. This is the YouTube debut.
Oh, this
Leah.
is the what? This is the debut?
Yeah.
This is easily going to be the worst episode simply because of that.
Only out from here.
Nothing to do with the fact that I woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning, but that's okay because we've got some really good gaming news to talk about, which will surely cheer me up, wake me up, and make this all worthwhile. Right, Myre?
Sure. Yes, of course. So, what have you been up to in your week of gaming then, Leah?
I've been futilely bashing my head against the wall playing League of Legends. Thinking about playing Deadlock again. I've not played it in like a month or so.
I haven't touched Deadlock in so long. Like, I just blinked and realized I haven't been playing it. I think
it's so good, but I was like, I can only do one MOBA, right? I can't be doing more than one MOBA. That's just absurd. And I was like, do I put my time into a dead game like League? It's not dead. That's very hyperbolic. Before you jump on me in the comments. But, you know, it's a very old game, and it's very hard to learn when you're fresh to it because there's so many champs. There's like over 150-something champs, and you need to know really what most of them do to counter them effectively in game and to, like, be good at the game in any capacity. So learning it is like an uphill slog, whereas I'm like, when I could just spend that time in Deadlock where I already know all of the heroes or whatever, the agents, and I can already play the game pretty decently, like, and it's not bashing my head against a wall. So I was like, why am I spending my time playing League of Legends when I could just play Deadlock? But I don't know, there's a specific kind of satisfaction out of League of Legends, I think, that makes it enticing.
League is interesting. I mean, I've tried it on and off for a little while. I mean, I played it back when it first came out, you know, and all that stuff. But, like, when you play it, do you play it with, like, the locked camera on your hero? Or, like, do you have it the, you know, the OG kind of unlocked camera way?
I think it's a lot easier when you're starting to have a locked camera because it's very overwhelming when you've never played a game of that type before, where it's like a top-down MOBA. So, like, trying to control where you are and not get flustered whilst also managing your abilities and wherever else is happening on the map before you get ganked by 4 people in your lane suddenly. Like, it's a lot. So I've been using fixed camera for a while, but now I've started getting to the point where I'm like, right, I understand mechanically how the game works. I understand a fair amount of champs, and now I will go and I'm like looking at the mini map, looking at what other lanes are up to, and like seeing what's going on in the rest of the game while I'm playing. So now I've got the hang of that. Next, obviously, the best way to do proper skill shots is with a free cam, and stuff, but I'm not quite there yet. I have realized that as I age, I am mechanically less and less proficient at games like this. And I'm just so bad at them. I am so terrible at League, and it hurts.
Age is just an excuse, Leah. Come on now. I simply just choose not to play it.
Well, it's unfortunate because, like, I am obviously a lower level account, but unfortunately most of their lower levels are just full of smurfs. They're just full of people who obviously know how the game plays, they obviously know what's happening, and most of them are career one tricks at a certain champ that they only ever play, so they're very good at that champ, and I always get stuck leaning against those people when I'm trying to learn. So
since you started hopping back in, I mean, like, I know Arcane just like had season 2, it's like midway through it right now. You haven't seen an uptick in, like, you know, newer people or people who are, like, you know, not as good in the game? It's
always hard to tell because I think people in League of Legends get really embarrassed when they're bad. So either they go completely silent and they're just like in their own little world, not joining in the team fights or anything like that, or they start projecting and getting really abusive in the chat because they're doing badly and it's obviously everyone else's fault. So it's hard to tell if anyone's actually new or if they're just, you know, like tilted off the face of the earth. Like, it's really hard to tell. Yesterday we had like a Seraphina who was just horrendous, like so nasty for ages. And then I was like, some of us are just here to have fun. And then they changed their tune pretty quickly, but it was already at the end of the game. They were like, oh, I'm sorry I was being a bit good. I'm like, doesn't matter, dude. You already tilted yourself. Like, you've already done it in.
I think even in Star Citizen, there's a similar situation. Like, in that game, there's like a game within it called Arena Commander, where like you can go in and it's just like a space combat stuff, like, you know, 1-on-1, like 2v2, that kind of stuff. In your spaceship, you die, you respawn, and you know, we have competitive leagues that have spawned from it. But lots of people, they never use their main account when they play that. They always use these like fake accounts and stuff so that nobody knows who they're fighting against. So like they don't like either learn, oh, this is how this guy flies, or like, you know, oh, if this guy's being a dick, or like if this guy sucks, I can't say, oh, I finally beat this guy, because you'll never know.
Yeah, that's very frustrating.
Yeah, PvP ego is huge.
It's kind of why in League, at least, ARAMs are pretty fun. You know, if you don't want to play Summoner's Rift, you can go into the ARAMs and you just get a random champ and you can just have a bit of fun, and they're short games and stuff, so it's a nice way to jump in. But
yeah,
it is, there are definitely, I think, from my experience, an uptick of players since Arcane. I mean, I started playing because of Worlds and Arcane.
Yeah.
I don't know, a couple of other friends did, so it goes in waves though. I have this every year. I play League for like a month and then I don't touch it again for another year until Worlds comes around, and then I'm like, maybe I can be Faker.
Maybe I can be Faker, the player, not the adjective. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I could be Faker at gaming. But yeah, no. Apart from Lee, I don't know. What have I been playing? Oh, I've been playing Final Fantasy 14 again.
Okay.
Yeah, I hopped back into that properly finally. And there was a new game that I was talking to Myre about this before we started today. There's a new game that I saw on TikTok that I was really wanting to stream today. It looks really good. It's called The Cabin Factory. It looks like, you know, like the janky horror games that seem to be like quite big at the moment.
Yeah.
It seems to be most horror games these days are like these, I don't want to call them indie, but definitely like indie style games where things are real janky, real weird, like the same sort of source mod kind of style thing to them. So this is another one of those. It looks very interesting. You have to determine whether in the cabin factory certain cabins are haunted or not. So I've not looked at it any more than that. That was enough for me. I was like, okay, I'm sold. So I was looking forward to playing it, but it doesn't come out till the 13th of December.
Listen, if you can't play that, play Slay the Princess. You already bought it.
Well, you see, I only just downloaded a game that I think I might stream today. I had a code for it for a while, and it's Storage Hunter Simulator. So I thought I might play that instead.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. One day I'll get a friend to play that goddamn game. One day.
One day. I'm pretty sure it's still in my library as well, just sitting there. But yeah, what have you been up to?
I mean, so I've also been watching Arcane, but before I hop into my week, I mean, Arcane, in one word, go. Like, how do you describe it?
In overall, or the last 3 episodes?
Go.
Chaotic. I don't know. Emotional. I was crying the last 3 episodes. I was sobbing. Like, I don't usually cry, but I was crying.
You know, it's really well done. I think you mentioned last week how like they don't use any mocap for it, like for a completely like CG kind of like 3D animated like thing. Like there's no mocap whatsoever. That sounds almost absurd.
I know, it's hard to believe sometimes when you look at the micro movements the characters make.
Yeah.
Like just the really subtle things in their body shifting and obviously their expressions. They feel like they must be mocapped because they're just so the care for that detail is intense, but they're not apparently. I think they filmed some things, didn't they? They like utilized obviously references that they filmed, but they didn't actually mocap. So
yeah. Okay, so my week. So last week I forgot all about. I kind of scrubbed it out of my memory because the second I remembered it, I just the FOMO. Monster Hunter Wilds.
Oh yeah, you know I was gonna bring that up last week and I forgot.
Like I played the beta. I know I said I was going to avoid it because you're like, I'm not gonna play the beta. I was like, yeah, sure, me too. I lied so bad. I have. Let me see.
It's full of it.
How many hours on Steam do I have on Wilds? Sadly, I can't even. Like Steam's not open. I have about 50 hours on that beta. That's not good. That's not good for a 3-day beta.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
You didn't even stream any of it, did you?
No.
You just, this is all, oh my God. How?
I mean, provided maybe those hours are inflated because like I just kind of left it on and stuff sometimes, but like, but yeah.
Even if you half that, that's a lot of time for 3 days. That's 5 hours a day.
Okay, yeah, sure, dude.
Halved. So 10 hours a day. No, wait, yeah, I'm wrong. That's, yeah, God damn it, that's like 10 hours a day at least you've spent.
Okay, yeah, sure, dude.
How?
Hunting monsters is in the title.
I can't. I don't believe it. Yeah, but now the game's gonna come out, and you're like, oh, I've already done all this, and it doesn't.
Not at
Progress doesn't
all.
transfer, does it?
It's yeah, progress doesn't transfer, but also like that's not quite how the demos are ever done in Monster Hunter. They kind of give you like 3 or 4 monsters to hunt and in one location, and like obviously there's no gear progression and stuff, and there's no story, so it's just you're playing Monster Hunter with the new engine.
Yeah, but you've already seen like some of the zones, and you've seen some of the areas. Like I like jumping into these games, and I'm like, oh, it's a whole new world. And now I'm gonna jump in, and like 4 of my friends have played. So if I jump in and play with them, they're like, oh yeah, we just need to go to here and here and here, and then get this gear, and then do that and do this. And I'm like, I just joined. I don't know what's happening, and I kind of like it that way. I don't like immediately being told we need to go do this, and this, so we can immediately start grinding this. Like, it just sucks all the joy out of it for me.
Well, I mean,
I know that's just a me thing.
I think we may agree to disagree, fellow hunter. I just checked. It's 24.2 hours, so I may be.
Oh, okay, so not quite as bad.
Not quite as bad, but still pretty.
Like 7 hours a day.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I cannot wait for February. Like, I'm just so stoked for it. I mean, if you've never played Monster Hunter before, you basically just you're a guy and you kill monsters, and when they die, you wear them, and then like you use you use that gear to kill more monsters, and then you wear them to kill bigger monsters, and then you wear them. And it's just fashion and gore and fashion. Violence. Exactly. Oh my god. But yeah.
But the fashion is intense. Like Monster Hunter World was just like that. The gear was so cool looking.
Yeah, fashion hunting is definitely the end game, but it's the same for any game. You know, like in Final Fantasy, anything really. I mean, like the true end game is like, how cool can I look? But yeah, I cannot wait for this game. It looks amazing. It was touch and go. There were a lot of issues with the game just because like of how poorly optimized it seems the beta was. It was so bad that in some people's like consoles and things, like they'd reach a polygon limit and all of a sudden they'd be chased by giant like polygons basically from Pokemon. Like the characters' faces would just be like, you know, a few triangles like with a massive cleft triangular palette. Like
amazing.
Yeah, so the community is like started to call them origami monsters and stuff. And so like I think maybe Capcom might embrace that whole thing, and like maybe they might do like a dynamic
add an origami monster.
Exactly. You know, why the hell not?
Cool.
But yeah, it was so
Special
much
maneuver.
fun.
Unfold.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was really cool. Really cool. I made my characters. Because you can make your characters and then like obviously now wait. But on February I can just hop into the game with the character I made. So yeah, I'm prepared for Monster Hunter Wilds. Otherwise, what have I been doing this week? I've been playing a lot of Star Citizen. There's like an event happening right now. Like they have.
Isn't there always an event happening?
I mean, yes and no. Like they have. So right now, again, like we're just about to release. I say we. Yeah. By the way, me and the devs.
We.
Yeah.
Me and my besties, the devs.
Yeah, they're about to release 4.0, which is essentially a whole new expansion of the game. Whenever they go from like, you know, one integer to the next, it's because like something paradigm shifting has happened. Like the shift from 1 to 2 was like when we just had the hangars to like actually having a playable like space where you could like fly about. Then 2 to 3 was you could actually land on planets. 3 to 4 is you can like go through wormholes called jump points and go to like a whole new zone. So like they're opening this like, you know, basically like a hell solar system. It's all like red and fiery. It's called Pyro. It's cool. And I've been playing a lot of that, and it's been pretty cool. I've also been doing a lot of role playing during this event too, because like it's pirates from this like, you know, red system have now come into like the place that we all know, and they've put a whole bunch of these custom missions in now to stop them. And so like I've been rolling as Crispin Hurston, so not quite Crispin Canterville, but so the Hurston family is like, if you've seen Blade Runner, it's like a whole planet that has its whole like architecture and has its whole like DNA kind of based off Tyrell essentially, but it's one family that owns the planet, and it's like a family business, but they own the planet, and obviously because it's a planet, it has so many people living there, so like it's this weird dystopian hierarchy, and Crispin's just a cog in the wheel, baby. But he has the name. And so he's like more superior than you, and so basically chat, you know, joins me, and
your favorite thing to do is just
come on peons and do nothing. Yes, exactly. But it's been a lot of fun.
Incredible that you managed to keep that consistent across nearly all your characters.
I have no idea what you mean. But yeah, otherwise in my week, like TTRPG stuff, new main character just debuted, which is a like a I don't want to spoil it. How do I describe main character as a tabletop RPG game? Without spoiling anything.
I don't know, because I think there was something that happened at the end that I missed because my stream kept crashing.
Yes, but if you made it,
it's a bunch of people thrown into a convention for a mock MMORPG. Who will attend the convention and then something happens? Question mark.
I mean, it's an isekai MMO, goddammit. Okay, but yeah, an isekai like a tabletop RPG. It's a lot of fun. It's really cool.
Is it using Wax Isekai system that we tested?
No, it's not. It's not using his isekai system. It's using something else. It's called like Fabula Ultima. Yeah. And yeah, it's been pretty cool. It's been pretty good. And I cannot wait for the next one.
You're in too many TTRPG shows. I don't know, you keep track of them all.
I mean, I'm only in 2. I'm in Cura and I'm in... For now! Honestly.
You were in Ungodly recently, and then you're guesting in like Blade Runner, and you've been on like all of them. Like if there's a show and table store, you've been in it.
Hi.
Hello, it's me.
It's me, that one guy.
The actor. But should we talk about gaming news? We've been yapping for too long.
Sure, we've been yapping.
Stop yapping. This is our YouTube show.
The debut.
Talk about other things. Yeah. So okay, on this show, if you're new, if you're coming from YouTube, all 3 of you that might be here, hello. We just like to talk about games from our perspective and stuff, don't we? So we look at all of the gaming news that's happened and we talk about anything that interests us. By no means is it an exhaustive list, and by no means is it necessarily a completely correct journalistic interpretation of what's happening. It's just our opinions. We're just yapping about gaming and stuff, and maybe bringing some gaming/tech stuff to your attention you didn't know about before, maybe offering a new perspective on things, and trying not to get caught up in the extreme, the miasma of extreme opinions online that are just there to shock and make you click. Trying to like maybe deconstruct those a little bit. And Myre's looking at me like that because he knows that he's going to absolutely offer the perspective of the clickbait article. And unfortunately, I have to be the preachy one that goes, well, Myre, that's not true, is it? But let's talk about it then. So let's start with WASD, shall we?
Okay. All right, so WASD, what is WASD for anybody who's not in the UK?
Well, I actually never went to one. Did you ever go to one?
I did. I went to one like 2 years ago or so now. So the WASD or the WASD Expo was a gaming exposition that happened like in the UK. It was like a baby grassroots version of things like maybe Insomnia without like the Insomnia without the land stuff, like a baby EGX, like a really, really small EGX. Like it's the exact same DNA. You go in there, there's stalls with different game devs, talking about their game, and that's pretty much it.
And
really.
It was most purely about gaming as well, right? Because I think a lot of gaming conventions slowly, in the UK at least, evolve into anime expo vibes. Like it is, they are just expos and there's some gaming there as well, but WASD seemed to stay pretty true to the idea of like you go there to check out new games, you actually play these new games. And EGX also has really tried to like cling to that as well. EGX for a while had that whole section of like indie games and stuff, and the lines weren't atrocious, so you could actually play things, which was nice, even up until 2023 when I last went. But yeah, WASD was one of it was a small, by all accounts, expo, I think. It wasn't like every one of those big expos you hear about, but it was consistent. And it's cancelled. Yeah, that's it. It's gone now. So that just adds another to the list of UK-based expos that have now bit the dust. We've had Insomnia has gone. Now we've got WASD. There was another one as well we lost in the last few years, I think. So now the only one left is EGX, but even that has kind of been cannibalized slightly.
True.
Yeah, this year it was a bit different, right?
Yeah, this year EGX didn't really have like a full-on presence like it normally does as its own standalone thing. It was kind of like part of the MCM Comic-Con thing. And I mean, I'm not really sure what's going on with gaming expos in the UK. I mean, we have gamers here. We play video games. Why can't we do an expo?
Well, I think we have to look really of like what makes an expo fun, right? Like, why do people go to expos? And I think this is something Insomnia really hinged on back in 10 years ago. The bigger the community you have, the more people are gonna gather to be a part of it.
True.
And I feel like the UK gaming scene is just weird. Like in the US, for example, the content creators you get in the UK, they're nowhere near as big as you might get in the US. On balance, there are obviously big UK creators. You've got like Sidemen, you've got like the big OG YouTubers and stuff.
Yeah.
But even back in the day, those were the big draw for like Insomnia. Like Syndicate was like every single Insomnia. The US just has more big personalities that go to these conventions that convinces other people to go with their friends. And it's not all about that. But when you look at like the other offerings for a convention, there's only really a small percentage of people I'd say go for looking at games and seeing the game offerings. And that's because expos aren't a good place to go play games. Like, I don't know, maybe it's my opinion.
Yeah.
To really experience a game, you have to have like 5 to 10 minutes at least with it. And if you're playing it 5 to 10 minutes, there's only 6 people can play it an hour, which means that that's a 6-person line all waiting for 30 to 60 minutes. How is that really? That's not really good.
That's fair.
Not many people get a good experience with that, I don't think.
I mean, that's fair, but at the same time, I kind of like that experience. Just thinking back to it now, like, I remember it must have been Gamescom I went to, but like, it's that same exact vibe. It's just the UK style, where like, waited in line to try out that like Tomb Raider game, and then like I came out with like a carabiner with like what's it called again? I forget what it's called. It's like it's tagged onto my backpack over there, but like the merch is cool. Like
a survival rope.
Exactly. Like I survived this queue.
Merch.
Yes.
But that sort of stuff just stopped happening. Like I don't know. I've been to a fair few conventions, and I just feel like in the last few years, a lot of that element disappeared, and yet the lines keep getting longer. Like
That is true.
EGX was pretty bad for it. You'd get I remember like Persona last year exhibited at EGX. And the problem is, if you want to go play a game that's not out yet and experience it before anyone else, which this used to be the only way to do that before, pre-order, whatever.
Paracord, that's the name, sorry. Yeah.
Paracord, yes. You'd be sitting in that line all day, and you wouldn't see the rest of the convention at all just to play that game for like 10 minutes.
That is
And I don't know, that just never appealed to me. I know for some people that is a big, people are quite happy to do that for some reason. Not for me. For me, it was always about like meeting with other people, with friends, walking around. Like I always liked the stands, the not homemade, like
the booths to buy stuff, the artist alley, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But like the problem is, like slowly they just turned into mini MCMs. So if you're not from the UK, MCM is like the big anime expo we have in London every year. And I used to go to that like 15 years ago, and it was always the same stalls, the same like big fake swords, pop figurines, plastic crap, like just a load of crap basically. You go there and you impulsively buy things because it's in front of you. And slowly the gaming conventions just ended up becoming that as well. I mean, EGX is owned by ReedPop, and they are the people that do MCM, so it's no surprise that those two have kind of merged in style over the years.
Makes sense. But like so, like not just like a EGX and MCM, but like I think even back with Insomnia, like there were stalls like the fudge guy.
The fudge guy.
Okay, maybe perhaps he wasn't there when you were like going to conventions, like going to the show floor. But there's a guy who would sell fudge at these conventions, like in one of the stalls. Right. And like I went to EGX, MCM, EGX Resd. I went to Insomnia, and his stall was in every single one.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not just him, right? It's like so many other different stalls. So like eventually they all kind of just became the same thing. The same like merchants who went to one convention would be at the next one. And there was really no identity other than the fact that like it had a different name, in my opinion, or it was like bigger or small. Like WASD was really small, but it was essentially just a smaller EGX Resd.
So it's like, what do you do to appeal to people to get them to come to conventions in the UK, like gaming conventions? What is there? Most of the big vendors stopped going. Insomnia, I don't think they ever really attracted. Insomnia was always a different kind of thing. They didn't have the emphasis wasn't on playing games for the most part. The emphasis was largely on like big brands like Elgato or XSplit used to have like huge
had a
presences
massive
there.
One too.
Nintendo used to, but Xbox and PlayStation never really touched those conventions, interestingly. Despite the fact, if you go you can't compare it, but Gamescom is one of the biggest in Europe, right? And
True.
Xbox, PlayStation, generally, they have their off years. They go all out. Like, there are huge stands there. And just in the UK scene, those, like, big companies just didn't seem to want to support those conventions at all, which I always find quite interesting. Like, what happened there? Why didn't they want a presence there? Was it just too expensive for what it was worth to them? I don't know.
Man, it was such a dream back then to like want to be, for me at least anyways, want to be like to work at the Nintendo store and like be one of like the guys like doing all the announcing and stuff. Man, for a long time I just go all the time, be like, oh man, I wish I was those guys up on stage. But then now, even I haven't seen them like around, like, you know, with a presence at these conventions either.
I mean, like, Nintendo last year, they brought out a big thing for EGX, but that's because they had Mario, the new Mario game to promote and stuff. And I feel like it's really weird that Nintendo, the one brand that consistently seems to advertise at these conventions. But it's, yeah, when I think about like as a consumer, what would convince me to go to a convention like that? And I just think nothing at this point, because nothing is new or interesting. Any game you want to play early has some sort of beta or pre-order bonus or something, so you can play it at home. And you know, that is also, I acknowledge that comes from like a sort of privileged point of view of having a setup, having your consoles, having your PC at home. You can do that with. Some people don't. So for those people, I'm sure it is like their only opportunity to try these games out. And I don't want to sound like I'm talking down on those people, because I promise I'm not. I just think like for a large majority of people, what's the crowd draw for these things? And I struggle to, like, no wonder these conventions are struggling, because it just doesn't seem they have like the crowd pleaser.
I feel like they've kind of been high street, you know how we had the fall of the high streets, right? Like there's no point going to that because you can just use Amazon, you know, like what's the point of like going to EGX when I can just like wait for the Steam demo like fest and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, so you go to hang out with your friends, but then what are you going to do while you're there? What's the draw for actually being there with your friends? If you know, meetups are always a big thing. Yeah. And I think in the gaming community as well, like you make so many friends online in certain spaces that often conventions are the only time it makes sense to meet up with people in a familiar territory. But I don't know. I just think some things happened in the last few years where people are just not as interested in that.
Yeah, I have no idea what they could do to fix that, because you mentioned like creators, and you know, like you and I, we do our stream stuff and that kind of thing, but we're nowhere near the size of like, you know, like the big gaming personalities in like either the US or the UK, really. But like what I'm getting at is like even within the UK, I don't really think that we have, or I'm aware of, a gaming personality presence that would pull people to a convention.
And that's what I was talking about earlier, right? Yeah, like because Insomnia used to hinge on that. Insomnia used to have their guest book, and you would all have your pictures and names there, and they would be like the draw. And back in like 2015 or whatever, when I started streaming, and I had like a pretty sizable audience back then. I was in that book, and I would attend, and I'd have like 20 to 30 community members would come to Insomnia just to like say hi and like hang out or whatever and up. And I don't like, that was the reason we went. That was the whole reason we went to Insomnia, was to like to do like a little community meetup and say hello to people. But yeah, and even back then there weren't really any huge, like I just said, Syndicate was like, I think the biggest one I could remember that would consistently go to those events, and he was the big draw back then. But yeah, I don't know. But then I was thinking about it, and I was like, but in the US, does that, like PAX and stuff, they seem to be doing it okay. A lot of these conventions, but then E3 closed down, so I don't think it's necessarily even a regional thing, even though that could be a factor. It's just in general, maybe the way that the gaming landscape has changed over the last 10 years means that conventions don't have a place anymore in the same way they used to. Everything's changed, right? Everything's moved online. All of the showcases are all online now. Like there's really, I suppose, when we look at spending money on exhibiting, like what would be the point when you could do a live stream and produce it and have it all pre-produced and packaged for you and safer? But with that said, I don't agree with that necessarily, by the way. I think it's really important for these brands to have that personal connection, and I think Xbox were doing it for ages as well, where, you know, these brands have they're reaching out to people. They're offering them opportunities. They're to play their games. They're offering opportunities to get to hands-on with their equipment and stuff like that. I think that's important, and I'm sad that we're losing that.
True. Me too. So, like, if a new one was to show up that would kind of buck the trend, what would they have to do differently is what I'm thinking, like, to really stand the test of time? I feel like you've kind of hit the nail on the head there, really, with, like, so much of everything is online that anything that you can do online should probably not necessarily be there. I'm not saying like it should be like a, you know, just a board game convention or whatever like that, but like the things that you provide the people who are there have to have merit for the people who actually take their time to show up.
They've got to be memorable. They got you got a reason, right?
Like there's a YouTuber called Josh Strife Hayes, and he did this really cool thing. Like he had this he has his own like TTRPG, but it's not really like a TTRPG. It's just a D&D thing where he's on stage and he's like stage acting with a massive fluffy D20 as he and like 3 other people like basically act out like it's like table story but without like a board. And like how they roll dice is he throws this massive fluffy dice into the audience and then they throw it back and that's the number. And like it's called Session Zero, and that's magical. That kind of stuff, I feel. If there was a convention out there that had more of that kind of thing, then
interactive.
Exactly.
I actually do think Dungeons and Dragons based content, it was keeping conventions alive in the UK for a while at least.
True.
With High Rollers, they would actually bring quite a big audience to conventions. There's also Outside Xbox, they do their D&D stuff as well, like, for 2 big UK based groups, and they would do live shows at these conventions, and I think they would usually pull a pretty decent crowd there. So that content was actually almost a linchpin for a little time now. So maybe there's room for a convention that is more TTRPG based these days. But like, it's personality driven, isn't it?
True, again, because Josh Strife Hayes is not known online as a TTRPG guy. He talks about MMOs and why they're dying, basically. He talks about like, you know, the principles of video game, like, you know, design and like, you know, what makes a good game. And then like he has a big following from that and just shows up at these conventions to like throw like a D20. So I think that like if a convention like that's to survive, they just need creative people like him, you know, of that size, who have an idea, who can do stuff that will engage a community. And just engaging
panels and stuff as well. I mean, these companies, I won't lie, I've been invited to so many panels at these conventions where it's just the same old shit over and over again. It's just the same old talk about how you got into streaming. Like nothing new, nothing interesting in the slightest. And people people are sick of hearing them nowadays. You can get like, all those resources are available online. Again, True. The panels don't offer anything particularly useful. And that, you need interactive, you need an experience. I think TwitchCon work really hard with that, actually. TwitchCon really try and make like their stage shows really interactive and interesting, and not something you could easily get outside of that environment. So I guess that's good for them. Through all the missteps they might make.
Yeah, true. But not to beat this dead horse too much longer, but like, so yeah, the co-founder says that basically increasing costs and less demand for stand space meant that running events is just not viable to us anymore. So yeah, nobody wants to run a stand anymore, and that's the reason. Yeah.
And that's been slowly happening. And it's the same with Insomnia, like slowly. I mean, everything's changed. Like, don't underestimate that. Back when I started, like I said, 10 years ago, XSplit had one of the biggest booths at Insomnia. And XSplit are barely even relevant anymore in the world. Like, back then, XSplit and OBS were competing for space because XSplit was largely considered the more user-friendly option.
Right.
XSplit was like the thing you could use to start streaming. But like I don't know what happened. I think slowly the software was just not good. Like it became quite a big resource hog.
Yeah.
And they offered a lot of paid features where OBS was just like free.
It wasn't customizable either.
Yeah, it wasn't customizable, and OBS was just, while all these big platforms like Stream Elements or whatever else, like these alert systems started all coming in and like, you know, taking pieces of the pie, XSplit just couldn't keep up. Yeah. So they used to have like a huge booth there at Insomnia, and then just slowly they just whittled down to nothing. And I think that's happened over and over again. And there's just not been enough to like fill the gap. On inverse, Elgato have like, Elgato used to just do capture cards.
True.
and they managed to really corner the streaming content creation space with really bespoke gear. So
yeah, I remember
you see them a lot more at conventions.
When they started doing this green screen, like I was there like for that year when they were like, yeah, this is this new thing. And I don't know how far their teleprompter has gone. I mean, like, do people use that? Is that actually on the market? I haven't even seen it.
I bought a teleprompter. I bought one. It's just really bulky.
Yeah.
Like, it's got a real specific use case. I can't really have it set up with my setup consistently because it's not very...
Your monitor gets in the way or something?
Everything gets in the way. It increases the height of your camera by like a good few inches, so you have to completely change your setup to make it work and look right. But in itself, the product is pretty good. Like it does what it says, and it is good at doing that. It's just kind of, it's a weird little hybrid between content creator and like some standalone video production, and it's just it's not quite there, I think.
I would say last point then on like gaming conventions in general, then would you say that like from what you just said a second ago, would you say that like it's a matter of there isn't much competition anymore? Like Elgato is now a giant and it has no competition.
Yeah, where's
like, exactly. Like Twitch is pretty much like a giant. I mean, sure, Kick exists, but who wants to use Kick? Like things like Caffeine, things like Mixer, which used to have massive booths of their own as well.
Mixer used to be big,
Yeah, there's no need to try and like compete for sunlight because you're the biggest tree there now, Like, so would you say that's one of the reasons why?
I think the industry's just changed like so much. I think that's 100% it.
Yeah.
The industry has really significantly moved on in a really short space of time for what usually would happen in a space like this. And, the tech has just outpaced itself and a lot of companies couldn't keep up. And the world of gaming has changed so significantly, as we talk about every week here, like how gaming has changed so much in just a short space of time. And conventions, I think, are a bit of a casualty of that because like a lot of IRL events, they can't seem to offer enough to keep you interested. Whereas you've got things like Fortnite doing all these in-game events, so you don't have to move from your PC. You have to spend an absurd amount of money. Let's not pretend as well that like the economy isn't like a huge elephant in the room when it comes to going to physical events, especially ones based in London. You're paying at least 200 quid a night for a hotel alone. Never mind exorbitant transport costs in the UK. Trains are crazy expensive. And then the con tickets on top. Con tickets, which realistically have tripled in price over the last, 10 years or so.
They have.
So when you have all of these factors together, it's just a recipe for disaster. Like, how can anyone keep up with that, consumer or, expo holder?
Yeah, I suppose why spend money keeping people engaged for an afternoon when you can just make your game better and keep them engaged forever, Like, never leave your seat.
I don't know, but so much goes into it. I'd be interested in hearing other people's opinions. Obviously, this just scratches the surface of, I don't know, maybes. Maybe it was this, maybe it was that. Perhaps it was a bit of this sprinkled in. But I just know that I lost a lot of interest in going to conventions. But I also got older. And I got more apathetic and
sad, man. I made most of my friends in conventions. Like every single outside of Star Citizen friend that I have outside of like Table Story, I all made through conventions. Without that, I would never have had those links. I would never have been able to there's so many different ways as a Twitch streamer to grow or as a content creator to grow. And obviously one of them is to, just like be consistent, like, have great work ethic, stream at the same time.
But then a lot of that advice that was bandied around back 10 years ago was go to conventions and talk to people. Now, every single person going to a convention wants to be a content creator. So everybody's going to these brand reps like, hey, so I want to be a content creator. I have followers, like, what can I do to work with you? And I'm sure the brand reps are probably like, they've been bombarded.
I've seen that. I feel like honestly what needs to change if they were to do that maybe perhaps is to have like more like it's hard to discriminate between like what creator is like like I don't want to use the word legitimate, right? Because like what makes a legitimate creator?
Yeah, but, especially with TikTok these days, you don't have to have a large following to understand the algorithm and go viral.
Yeah.
It's not, there's a cause and effect there, but
true.
But yeah, like how do you legitimize creators and understand who to prioritize? And when you only have so many keys, that's always been a problem I've seen on like social media, right? Is people who do like key mailing and stuff, is we have to say no to some people because we only have 50 keys and 500 people have asked for one. So how do you prioritize? And yeah, that's hard. That's a hard thing to do.
It's a tough space, and I don't really envy anybody in who has the power to give out keys or who is a community manager.
Mean not much. Like followers can be indicative of a big audience, but generally speaking, there is only one metric, and you have to look at a lot of other metrics. So if you just go based off follower count, you're just shooting yourself in the foot most of the time.
Yeah, I remember this one time at a convention, like we were just like at a beer garden, and like somebody from like I'm not gonna name like the company shows up. He's like, yeah, I work for like this big like a component company, and then like my friend, and he's like, any of you guys creators? And I'm like, yeah, I've got like 10,000 like followers at the time. And he was like, oh, okay. And then my other friend was like, yeah, I've got 50,000. He's like, yeah, you. And he just gave him his card. He's like, talk to me.
And it's so funny watching older people get to grasp with social media in that way, and they're so like outdated in the way that they handle those interactions, because they're like, wow, big number. You must be important. I will schmooze with you. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, let's move on. We've been talking about this for a while, but it's an interesting one, and it is sad that the UK industry, we are slowly seeing a decline in actual events. I hope it's not the death knell for a lot of UK community, because as you say, that's where a lot of the fun happens.
I live for it. I'm just a different animal, Leah. I'm an introvert, but I also like to go out every now and then.
You're not an introvert. You get so much energy from hanging out with other people. You're just lazy. You just don't like going out. Every time we are out anywhere, he's like, let's go say hi to people. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. I've known Myre for a number of years.
A lazy extrovert. Oh my god.
You just, every time you're out, you're in your element. You're like, you just love talking to people and you love making connections. And like you said, you made friends from conventions. I couldn't even fathom. I'm so scared to talk to people. But yeah, you're in the zone. You love that.
Anyway.
So I'm sad for you, because that was your element.
It was. And now I'm just a hermit again. Anyway, let's move on to stuff happening later on this year. So, of course, we have the Game Awards, and something that's quite controversial at the moment is the Game Awards decision this year to count DLCs as making a game eligible for this year as Game of the Year, with Elden Ring's DLC being actually the thing to bring up this discussion.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
Honestly, I mean, what is the Game Awards, right? I mean, like, it's like, what is the best game this year? I mean, like, is the DLC for the Elden Ring game like good enough and big enough to count as a game from this year? I don't know.
A lot of people would argue yes.
Yeah. But like, you know, at the same time, it's also going to maybe perhaps overshadow other games that are coming out this year that may not necessarily have that space. It's like saying, oh, if Bethesda decide to make a Skyrim freaking like a DLC like next year, will that then become Game of the Year 2025? If a you know, like, what's the? I feel like the best thing they should have done and could have done is to make a new category for best DLC.
Yep. This is a symptom of the evolving gaming industry. Like seeing these DLCs that are basically like additions to the base game, but are offering so much content that they're not just extra a level or two like DLC used to be. They are an entire game tacked on. Maybe it's the case where we do need a completely different category these days to honor that. Yeah. Because as you say, it means that games like Astrobot get overshadowed massively by these big DLC based, offerings. And we had this discussion last year because, like I've said a few times, I was on the panel for the EE Game of the Year jury last year for the BAFTA games, which is where we had to like make the short list of like what deserves to be up for the community to vote for. So in the end, it was the community's decision of what won. But we were having that discussion, like, if a DLC is big enough, should that be like the Cyberpunk was the one that we were talking about? Is the Cyberpunk DLC a significant enough change to the base game that it should be considered on its own as a Game of the Year candidate? And it was a really hard discussion to have because, of course, I want to say no in a lot of ways because I think it's really unfair for a game that's already been out for so long and has an existing audience to then overshadow a new game, a new IP. But at the same time, if there's so much work that's been put into it, there's a lot of games that have existing audiences. Why shouldn't that game also benefit from the work that they've put in? True. I don't know. It's a really hard discussion to have. I think there's no right answer to it except for making a new category specifically, since they are so common. I mean, but then would Final Fantasy VII Rebirth count as a remake? Would that be like... What
is interesting is that remakes have actually been pulled into this discussion as well by just like the internet at large. But I would say that remakes really, at their core, are new games and shouldn't really be in this discussion at all. It would really suck to have remakes all of a sudden, let's say next year, be in the Game Awards as in the DLC category, as opposed to being a fully fleshed out game, because that's what it is. You know?
Yeah, I completely agree. But then also, I wonder if it would make people change their behavior on if you took away the ability for these games DLCs to be included in Game of the Year nominations. I mean, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but I think there's a lot of stock that's put into these titles that you get from having these awards.
True.
Maybe why not just have it as a standalone, and just price it as you already do as the DLC pricing, but just as it as a standalone. It's a sequel essentially, even if Because when you get to these games that are just essentially sequels within a DLC package, I wonder what the benefit of calling it a DLC is.
Exactly, because I feel like what's going to happen in that case is that like the games companies themselves will likely just not call it a DLC. They'll call it, I mean, like with Shadow of the Erdtree, I don't think it's called a DLC, or they call it, they say it's, you know, it's Elden Ring, colon, you know, colon, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, or whatever.
Yeah,
colon,
right.
something.
Like,
but like,
with movies, for instance, you know, like when they make a second movie or whatever, like with the Avengers, like, you know, franchise, for instance, they don't like, it's a new movie, right?
Yeah.
I guess that you could argue, well, when they make Overwatch and Overwatch 2, and never mind, that's a really bad comparison.
It's really hard, actually, isn't it? When you start thinking about it properly, there's so much nuance, and then suddenly, but what about this game? But what about that game? Has this game transformed enough to be considered a sequel, or is it actually just still a DLC? Where do you draw the line? And it's the same argument we had about like alphas and, you know, whatever they were, like playtest sort of things, where there's really everything's just blurred together and it's hard to like separate them, and in this case it's going to be another contentious issue, I think, in gaming.
But I think at my heart I feel as if this shouldn't be the case, and they should just make a DLC category. There's enough games with DLCs that have come out this year to have one.
Yeah, for sure.
What might happen though is that like because there are more games being released, I think, than like sequential DLCs happening, is that you'll have one big game a year always taking home that crown if they were to just make a DLC category, you know, because not all DLC are made equal. I mean, you have Shadow of the Erdtree, you have horse armor, you know, so like where do you draw the line?
Yeah, what counts as DLC? Like, exactly, where is the line between DLC and just so much content that it's not a DLC anymore?
Exactly.
And then there's an argument was had years ago about remakes, because you know, should the Silent Hill 2 remake take precedence over a brand new IP? Now, I know I think one of the awards at least has a new IP award specifically for that reason.
Okay.
But I think this is a case of the award shows not really keeping up with the evolving nature of games. And games have, whether you like it or not, the way everyone experiences games, the way the wider audience experiences games is very different now. The way that games are released is quite different to how it used to be.
So here's their full like statement. So expansion packs, new game seasons. You could have like you could literally have GTA Online have like a new season come on, and then it's going to be Game of the Year. That's interesting. DLCs, remakes, and remasters are eligible in all categories if the jury deems the new creative and technical work to be worthy of nomination.
It's the easiest way of dealing with it, right? Just go, yeah, go on, we'll consider them all. I mean, you have to hope that whoever the jury is, they consider, you know, they have a good perspective enough to consider whether or not something is relevant enough. But then how do you add in games that are like games as a service, like evolving games that are adding content consistently? Is not that I think it would ever be considered for an award like that, but like, you know, if the World of Warcraft expansion is a big DLC, essentially, would that be considered? If it was good enough to be considered, of course.
Apparently,
but, you know.
so. Apparently now, like, you know, even that's going to now have a place in the. And I think when it comes,
which is not something you typically see. I think nominated for those awards ever.
True. Well, I suppose if it's going to be a matter of credit where it's due, then like I'm all for it, right? As long as, I mean, game awards typically are very political, right? I mean, like with this particular one, I think like the popular vote, like the gamers vote, is only 10% of like the full, like, you know, the voting power. 90% is the judges. So it's all So it's all going to be you know, done by panel, done by like discretion of other people who you don't necessarily know, or like where their idea of what is it, what their biases are, exactly,
what the perspective is, like what they think is reasonable. But with that said, we actually haven't seen the nominations. So there's a lot of people getting, you know, frothing at the mouth about stuff that we don't even know about yet. Like it's fairly safe to say that I mean, Shadow of the Erdtree was pretty significant. It's safe to say that there's a high chance it will get a nomination. We've had a lot of good games out this year, though, and I think regardless of what happens, it's going to feel like at least one game has been snubbed. People saying that Helldivers doesn't deserve a nomination because of the drama around it, when really, like, I don't know. I feel like that's a really closed-minded approach to the whole game is no longer valid to consider because of
external drama.
Yeah, because
that's
of an
really
external.
Dumb. Yeah.
we've got to look at the merits of the game itself, right? And the community it's built around it, the experience that people had, the social impact that it had. Were people talking about it a lot? Did it have, silly things? Were there a lot of memes made about it? Did it have that social reach? You couldn't move on TikTok without bumping into 15 different Helldivers clips. Like, they were everywhere.
Yes.
So, you got to think about that kind of thing when you're considering nominations as well. Like, what was the impact on a wider scale?
What was the meme appeal?
Yeah. But then, of course, how good is the content itself? Is it, I don't know. There's a few games that I think have come out this year that have had a controversy surrounding them, yet are still solid games offering. So
yeah. All in all, I think we'll see. I mean, do you have any games from this year that you would say you have a strong feeling for Game of the Year?
I don't know, because it's hard, right? Because you got games like Balatro that came out that took real surprise underdog kind of games. Like, wow, that's so unique.
Yeah.
That is so different to almost anything else that's out. Like, that's so cool, and it did pretty well because of that uniqueness and because of its adaptability. Obviously, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was a huge game for me. That falls into the talk about remakes and things like that, but that's its own beast.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was just its own huge beast. There's a lot of, Helldivers was great. Space Marine. I don't think Space Marine is going to get any nominations, unfortunately. I think it's probably, I don't know, it's maybe too niche, maybe too outshadowed in a very packed category this year. But, you got Black Myth Wukong, and we've got Shadow of the Erdtree, and Silent Hill 2, and probably a lot of other things that I've forgotten about right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to call that one.
That's fair. For me, it's got to be Monster Hunter Wilds Beta.
It's not even out yet!
Beta!
We'll have a Beta of the Year award. What other award categories can we have? Best Protagonist of the Year award. I feel like that should be an award, not voice actor.
Right.
That's its own separate category, and we should definitely have that.
Yeah.
But Best Protagonist of the Year.
As in, like,
who's got the
for
most
writing?
nuanced writing? Yeah, who's got the most nuanced writing, the most interesting character, the best character design. Add all these things together. Who's been the Best Protagonist of the Year?
That's a cool one. I think not even like the Oscars does that. The Oscars is just like, leading male, leading female, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and gaming industry, like I say, we've moved on. We should be doing our own thing, treading our own path at this point.
Exactly.
We should have weird things like that. What else could we have? Do we have? Is there a best writing category?
I don't know.
There should be. If there isn't, there should be.
Game award categories. We're doing it live, folks.
I can never remember, because the problem I have with the Game Awards, especially last year, is that the awards are largely overshadowed by the advertisement for new games. So whilst it's like a look back at, wow, look at these achievements these games have made over the past year, how cool they came out. All right, ignore all that. Look at these things instead. Like, I hate it so much.
Well, they have best narrative, so yeah, I think that falls under it.
Yeah, best narrative.
Yeah, they could pull it apart though, and like give more credit where it's due. But I guess that's just another award to the same person, right?
Maybe, maybe not. I guess it'd be up to the jury, right? Of whether they can do a good enough job of separating those two categories out, or whoever writes the guidelines for the jury. Obviously you got like best soundtrack and best actor and best supporting actor and that kind of stuff. I don't know if Game Awards has those ones though. Actually, I know BAFTA does, because that's more performance based. But
I think that like with the Game Awards, definitely maybe perhaps like best impact. Yes. Because obviously there are games that are good, as in like just like when you look at the game objectively, this is a good game. However, for whatever reason, it doesn't like get the sales. But like when from a technological standpoint, from like an art standpoint, it's this is huge.
I mean, there is a technical achievement award usually.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like a best technical achievement, and obviously you got like best animation awards and things like that too, which would all help.
Yeah.
But social impact is a good one, like best social impact or best whatever what was the word you used? Just best impact.
Oh, yeah, I said social impact, but maybe meme appeal.
Best meme appeal. They want these awards to be taken seriously. I think there's ways that you could definitely modernize the way you approach these awards. I don't know why we feel so stuck in old. This is the thing, right? Old patterns do tend to stick. Because you're like, well, that's the way it's always been done. So that's the way it always should be done. When it's like, some person just made that up 40 years ago. You don't have to keep conforming to that same like line of thinking. You can adapt. We can change.
Yeah, so I'm looking through the list, and there is games for impact, but that's more for like a social cause and stuff, and like planting trees, not like, you know, which one had the most cake W's, you know, which is what I'm getting at, you know, like which one had the most like the most relevance with, like, you know, Reddit,
biggest
and
splash.
yeah, biggest, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think personally, I mean, that's where Helldivers would, if they were going to win, that's where they probably would be a highly potential nominee. That's not even a good sentence. I don't know. I'm losing the will to English.
Losing the will to English. That's me on a daily basis.
Me thinking about moving to Spain. Right. Anyway, let's move on. That's the Game Awards. Argument over whether DLC should be valid in the discussion for Game of the Year, or whether they should be not included because they overshadow other original IPs and brand new games that have come out that don't have the backing of a huge game behind them.
Yeah.
Very lots to consider.
We have some Ubisoft news. I mean, like, what week is it that we don't have Ubisoft?
Sick of it.
Oh my god.
No.
So where do we stop? Which one do you want to get into? Because we have a couple. What now? I mean, like, this just so happens to be Ubisoft adjacent. I mean, so, like, you know, we have live action adaptations, and I think in the past couple years we've had some really good adaptations, you know, like with the One Piece thing, and, you know, the Super Mario movie wasn't bad either. But, like, so Ubisoft was working on a Splinter Cell movie, and it's kind of just like a quick story here. But apparently they're canceling it because the producer admits they just couldn't get it right.
You know what? Fair enough. Because I think maybe having a bad adaptation is just worse.
True.
But I mean, there's always that what could have been, right?
Yeah.
But also, isn't Splinter Cell a fairly generic? I don't know. I'm going to get crucified for this. Isn't Splinter Cell a fairly generic, like, concept-wise, not something that is super unique to this franchise?
It's very Jason Bourne, you know, 007 kind of deal. Yeah. You know, it's
like, is it something we've not seen in films before, or like we've seen a lot of that type of thing, especially like give Jason Statham a car and a gun, right?
Yeah.
Obviously there is nuance to it, and there's unique points to Splinter Cell, because Splinter Cell is another Tom Clancy thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what would they have been able to offer the world that wasn't already kind of played out in the action?
Did Tom Clancy actually write books?
I actually,
like, who was he?
I mean, like, I know is he's got a name.
Yeah, it's like, you know, Sid Meier's this, Tom Clancy's this. Okay, but who are you, and like, why? I mean,
no, he was a novelist.
He's
best known for his technically detailed espionage and military science storylines set during and after the Cold War. 17 of his novels have been bestsellers.
Oh my god. Okay, I mean, they could have just used one of the books, I guess, and just adapted that. But the guy says here, the producer says, that movie would have been awesome, but we just couldn't get it right, script-wise and budget-wise.
I wonder why. I wonder what they were trying to go for, like what the vision was.
Real explosions.
It was going to be hardcore and awesome, they said. Maybe, I think we need to see more anime-based adaptations, though. I mean, when they're done right, they're so right.
When they're done right. But, oh my god, the past, like, 2 decades of anime adaptation has been so bad, man. So bad. Mob Psycho was trash. Full Metal Alchemist was trash.
Oh, I don't mean that. I mean adapting games to anime, not adapting anime to live action.
Oh, right, like...
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
Cowboy Bebop. God rest your soul.
Yeah, you mean,
but, like, like Edge Runners, Arcane, you know, all these kind of things where we
need more of those, because, you know, they work well. They work better, especially
it's a good medium translation.
Exactly, because you don't really have, like, you know, human beings involved in it, because much like there's the uncanny valley, I guess there's also the canny valley, you know, like, it just gets too canny all of a sudden. I don't know, that was a really bad but you can can that one, but yeah.
But with that said, the long-awaited and animated adaptation of Ubisoft's Splinter Cell Deathwatch is also still to come, which Netflix officially announced in September. So they are doing that anyway.
All right, there we go.
Okay, fine. All right, fine. You get away with that.
Yeah.
And also, nearly a decade after its announcement, Ubisoft's Watch Dogs movie finally wrapped filming last month. So that's when I talk about, like, interesting concepts. I think Watch Dogs has a stronger foundation to be a bit more unique, perhaps, in an offering for a film. So That's probably better.
I mean, Mr.
Anyway.
Robot's already done it, but sure.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Mr. Robot was very good. But Mr. Robot, I think if you had a more action-oriented sort of vibe with the Mr. Robot.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Robot was so good, and it was so grounded. It was quite slow, which didn't work in a film, really, does it?
No, you're right. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this anime, though. I mean, like, anime adaptations, as you say, are more successful than they have been. Yeah. So, like, yeah. Man, my favorite Splinter Cell game was, I forget what it's called. There was, like, a 2-player one. Like, you played as, like, Sam Fisher, and then the other guy was, like, I think he was called Kestrel. And it was, like, mission-based and stuff, and you're just doing spy shit. And then I would log on every single day and hit multiplayer, and it would always be the same guy would pair me with, even though we weren't friends on Xbox.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. I guess because maybe they also...
You got home from school and, like, booted up your Xbox. So
yeah. We finished the whole game, man. Such memories.
That's so cute, actually.
I'm really hoping that it wasn't just a bot with the name.
That would be so hilarious, to be, like, all nostalgic over your friend that you never knew online, and it's just a bot the entire time. Yeah. I've been getting all these nostalgia posts, actually, on my TikTok of the Halo 3 multiplayer screens and stuff like that, the OG ones, and remembering and feeling sad again. Oh, back in the day.
Is there anything new happening with Halo soon? I mean, like, normally when things like that like show up on TikTok is because like there's something else like in the undercurrent coming up.
No, I've seen a lot of Destiny nostalgia posts as well, so I think it's just people being nostalgic, because even, you know, that was what, 15 years ago, the Halo 3. Very, very different vibes.
A while ago.
I don't think there's nothing announced for Halo, and in fact, I'm hoping the next announcement we get is for a Gears of War 1 remake, but that's just me being, I said optimistic. But Halo, I don't know, it's a bit contentious. Halo Infinite is...
Speaking of contentious, we have our last piece of news today, at least for video game stuff. Yeah, so, I mean, it's more Ubisoft stuff, Leah, your favorite.
My favorite.
So, apparently an Ubisoft executive has said Assassin's Creed Shadows, well, they think it's the worst thing they've ever seen, is what it says here in quotes on quotes. Like, I don't know who this author is, but, like, I did check to see, like, the source, and there's a video where the guy does say this exact same thing. But at the same time, the guy's French. Maybe he was trying to be edgy. But yeah, he essentially says, and I think I have it highlighted here, that, highlighted here somewhere. It was highlighted. It's gone now. You have to trust me, it was highlighted. But yeah, so he said, one of the things I've noticed since the pandemic is that we have a lot of juniors in our team. Probably half the team that's building Assassin's Creed is building a game for the first time. And,
no, there's a lot to unpick from that statement alone. The idea of a lot of juniors being involved in one of Ubisoft's flagship games is very interesting, because it can be interpreted in two ways, right? Like, one, they're hiring a lot of people who are fresh to the industry, which it's really hard to get a leg in the door when you're in the gaming industry. It's really, really hard to, if you want to work in games, to even get anywhere in games. So on the one hand, oh, cool. You know, there's a lot of people who maybe are getting a leg up into the industry. Awesome. On the other hand, why is it so full of juniors, and where are all the experienced devs? Is it because they don't want to work for Ubisoft anymore and they've all left? Like, what's going on there? Is there something more to look into? But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I guess the turnover is huge, generally speaking, within games industry. But
I mean, we can talk about all the layoffs.
True.
You know, the fact that it's very common in a lot of industries to lay off a whole bunch of people who are commanding big salaries to bring on a lot of juniors who don't bring in anywhere near as much of a demand for salary. It happens in IT all the time. So
yeah,
just speculation.
he does go on to say, so these guys, the 50% who are new, they don't know how to make a game, basically. Even though they're playing the game right now and they think it's the worst thing they've ever seen, it's going to be good. We're going to get there. So I think he's trying to tell a story, and it's kind of been taking a little bit out of context here as for, like, you know, the quality and the state of the game and where it is. Like, it's an odd article because obviously the headline is like this clickbait thing, but when you read into it, it's more like the guy is saying that, like, their games, like, obviously the game is good when it's shipped. Up until that point,
this is why I hate games journalism and the state it is in right now, because this is entirely based on the way that this article is framed. And for context again, as an Ubisoft hater, I don't like defending what they do. And I do think it's pretty brave to make statements like that, knowing that that can be easily taken and exploded the way that it often does. But this article could have so easily been framed completely differently. Because what he's actually saying is games, as they are, when they're being developed, it's really hard to see the end vision until right at the end when it all comes together. And often we know for a fact that gaming creation, gaming development is not some la-di-da-da-da skip through the fields linear thing where it just all comes together and looks incredible. Gaming development and creation is a tumultuous. It's up and down. Things get chopped, cut, add in, for better or worse. However, you know, every company seems to do it, so that tells you that somewhere down the line there is a sort of chaotic necessity to the way games are developed. And what he's essentially saying is that is like, it's very chaotic developing a game, and sometimes it's hard to see the end vision until at the end you're like, oh, I see it all come together and now it makes sense. But up until then, it looks terrible because you are one person working on one part of the game, and you don't get to see the whole thing come together a lot of the time. So this article could have so easily been framed it's nothing. Like, essentially. But what they've done is they've taken the statement and inflated it to sound far worse than it actually is. To make it sound like he's going, this game's terrible! And everybody working on it thinks it's terrible! And that's not the case. It's just saying, hey, pretty common in game development for it to look pretty scary for a while until it comes together.
I think that a statement he says in the actual video is, it's shit until it's shipped. But but yeah, I guess people are taking this and then looking at the AC stuff that we've seen so far, like the vertical slice things, like the animations and the general just the vibe, and also comparing this to their Star Wars game as well, and saying, oh, that explains why, you know, like well, they have such expertly made and done environments because that's the 50% who have been working on games, and then you have like the poor like character interactions and animations, and those are the brand new guys, you can tell. But yeah.
I mean, not to sound like I'm defending, I couldn't care less about Assassin's Creed. I've got to be completely honest. It's never appealed to me in any particular way, and I don't really care for Ubisoft. I don't enjoy their games. I think largely, I've said it's just a bunch of stuff to get you to put hours into nothing. Which, I mean, you could also say is all gaming when you think about it. But in Ubisoft's case, anyway, it's just grind for the sake of grind.
The words and expressions of Leah are not the expressions of Myre and 50% of GWIG. So Ubisoft, if you have any, I'm just...
With that said, I just want to be fair, right? I want to. This could be a terrible game. Yeah, maybe it is terrible. Maybe it is horrendous. I don't want to feel like I'm defending a game that could be absolutely horrendously bad. I just want to make sure that we're reading articles and we're not just looking at headlines.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, GWIG, we're just, you know, like gabbing about stuff, but we're gabbing with context, and it's good to have it because otherwise, what happens is that, like, obviously, somebody can say something, I can say something, and somebody can clip like 10 seconds of that, and all of a sudden I'm the worst person ever without context.
You can get angry about anything if you try hard enough and just pick your battles, you know. Choose your hill to die on. And this one is not worth it.
This just in, Leah hates hills.
I refuse to die on this one.
All right, I think that's kind of it for our gaming docket. However, I think you have this thing about Call of Duty. Do you want to talk about that still?
It's just a brief sort of thing, so I actually didn't look into it too much, but people were pretty mad. There was a backlash over the last week or so because there was a bunch of XP tokens that you could, at first, when there was an update, when the new season came for Call of Duty, you could use all these XP tokens in Black Ops 6. And it turns out that was a mistake.
Oh, okay.
So basically, if you'd played a bunch of Call of Duty and you'd saved all your XP tokens for a short time, you could use them. And everyone in Black Ops 6, the new game, and everyone's like, "Wow, that's so cool! Thanks, Treyarch. That's really kind of you. Wow!" And then Treyarch was like, "Oh, yeah, that was a mistake, by the way. It was a glitch. It was a glitch. We didn't mean to do that." So of course, everyone's like got this goodwill going, and they're like, "Wow, Treyarch, you're so cool. Thanks so much."
Oops.
And it didn't go down too well when they then went back and fixed it.
We gotta fix all this goodwill.
Yeah.
We have lying
we're
about.
Getting too much good press right now. No, thank you. But I mean, there is something to be said for the fact that if everybody's suddenly using a bunch of XP tokens, like their double XP weekends and all that are carefully curated to make sure people are allowed to get ahead and feel a sense of satisfaction in leveling their weapons and stuff, but not too much, because otherwise you've got nothing to play for anymore once you've done everything and collected everything.
Yeah.
And they need players. So yeah, they did actually go back on it, I believe. They said they return it as a feature soon, which means they will gut the entire premise of why people enjoyed having those XP tokens, I'm sure, and be like, well, if you combine 7 XP tokens, you can have half of 1 XP token or something like that, because that's usually apparently what happens. Maybe I'm just cynical. I don't know. I feel like I have to be.
I mean, somebody has to be.
Yeah,
somebody has to be the tempering force here on GWIG.
That's it. That's all it is, really, as far as I know. There's probably some other things to talk about in gaming as well, because I had a couple things linked and then I put them in our group chat, and now I can't find them. So they vanished into they're just into the ether.
Do you ever have dreams like where you are using Discord or reading Twitch chat?
I have dreams where I message people sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just in case, maybe perhaps you dreamt it.
I mean, it is very possible. I do have really annoying realistic dreams. Maybe I did.
Oh, dude, sometimes I wake up and I just have to go, wait, was that real? Did that happen? Did I post that? Oh, shit, did I post that?
The worst feeling.
Yeah. But anyway, shall we talk about tech?
Yeah, let's talk about tech.
All right. So I have a few things, because last week I was like, oh man, I didn't get anything in time. So it's your choice. Do you want to talk about AI or talk about medicine? Well, for now.
I want to talk about AI because I see this second one that I like the idea of talking about.
All right. So in the docket, I have this thing that just says like AI kit boga destroys scammers' time. Well, apparently this one phone network has employed an AI grandmother who just basically goes, can you repeat that? I'm not sure what's going on. And like, it's impossible for the scammer to know if they're like actually talking to somebody who, could be a mark or just like AI. And I think that this is the best use of AI possibly ever. And it's amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the better uses of it. Mm-hmm. And it's from O2 as well. They've called it Daisy or D-A-I-Z.
I hate that.
Very cool. But yeah, the whole idea is, of course, phone scams, despite them being so old at this point, you think no one would fall for them anymore because everybody knows about them. But no, people still consistently fall for them every single day, especially older, more vulnerable people.
And also younger people too.
Well, yeah, because they get so sophisticated. Like these days, they are, I don't know, it's kind of nuts. Hang on a sec.
Don't give some youngsters credit. I have a 23-year-old cousin, and she is the most naive person ever. And she can't freaking put a printer together, okay? Your printer comes, and all you have to do is plug in a button and hit start. Can't do it.
There is something to be said for that. But I mean, these scams are intense these days, especially with our reliance on technology, and they make you second guess everything. Like, oh, my bank's calling. Oh my God, maybe I did do a fraudulent charge. What's happening? So I've been watching Kit Boga for years and years and years, like literally about 8 years. He's been doing this for so long now. And his whole thing is wasting scammers' time. So he will get these scammers on the phone and they will talk to him and be like, hey, oh yeah, your computer's been hacked and you need our antivirus to save it. So we will install our antivirus and you can pay us in Google Play Store vouchers or whatever. Yeah. And he just keeps them on the phone for ages. And his schemes have got slowly more elaborate. So beginning on wasting their time and in the meantime trying to track down where they might be coming from. To get them eventually shut down. Now it's like a full-on theater production. The amount of effort he puts into scamming the scammers is nuts. It's really, really cool to see. So he has all these different characters. Sometimes he has guests in. He's got so many special effects that he includes to sound like he's driving or these are all the basic level things. Like, and he has full-on I don't know, laptops and stuff that are connected to the internet that he will program to look like they have viruses or program them to really mess with the scammers who remote into them. It's just really, really cool. Like he's just evolved it over time and it's sick. Yeah. And there's also, I do want to shout out as well, a guy called Jim Browning who is on YouTube, and he takes a more conservative approach to it. So Kit Boga does it for entertainment on Twitch, so you can watch him live. But Jim Browning, he just posts up YouTube videos, and he ends up finding the scammers. He ends up tracking them down with the authorities and getting them shut down.
So Jim Browning actually worked with O2 to make this DAIZ.
I didn't read that. Okay, well, there you go then. That's very cool. Oh yeah, look, if you've seen any of the several YouTube channels that scam scammers sometimes by using a voice changer to sound like an old lady, you'll know what to expect. Daisy has been trained with the help of one of the platform's most popular scam baiters, Jim Browning. Love that. Sick.
It's amazing. You know, I mean, it's gonna be an arms race, really, with like, you know, like AI, LLMs, and all that stuff. Eventually, they're gonna like, you know, move from using like their scammers to have AI scammers instead, because what really is the difference? Somebody using a script, you can't like work off the script, as we've seen with these scam baiters, or like an AI doing the same thing. And eventually, like, just online, it's just gonna be a freaking echo chamber of just like one AI grandmother talking to an AI scammer that no one's gonna hear, you know? And what a beautiful feature that's going to be. But still.
It's very cool. I mean, yeah, if they can manage to make it consistent, yeah, love that. Love that.
That's cool. Anyway, that was just some short and sweet, well, that was one article. What else do I have? I've got, oh yeah, so Anthropic, one of the AI companies that we cover every now and then, has spoken about perhaps the necessity for AI welfare. So, like, there's a whole question about whether AI welfare is the new frontier in ethics. Because obviously, you know, like, we're making artificial intelligences, and right now, they're not necessarily intelligent. Sure, they have, you know, it's like a calculator can give you 2 + 2 or 2 × 2, right?
They're just the feedback machines.
Exactly.
They don't reason.
But, yeah, but if we're gonna get to a point eventually where, like, this, we keep already moving the goalpost for what is sentience, not just for AI, but even for animals and creatures and stuff. I've seen that goalpost moved in my lifetime like a couple times already. But like when it comes to AI, that goalpost has been moved significantly. You know, like when it comes to like being able to, you know, solve you know, logic questions, speak better than I can, that kind of thing. You know, like they've all done that. You know, so like I guess now the question is, should we work on perhaps the welfare of the AI? And so apparently a few months ago, Anthropic quietly hired its first dedicated AI welfare researcher who is working on, I suppose, the best interests of AI, like HR for AI, essentially, you know, making sure that they're not suffering and stuff like that, if AI can suffer. And I thought that was a really interesting concept, especially when we spoke about like a couple of months ago, about like those chips being made using human brain matter, because that
brain organisms.
Exactly, because that kind of just bridges the gap even more so, you know, in a really strange way.
Yeah, I mean, as it is right now, from all the systems we know about in the general public, this seems like a complete waste of time. Like, there's nothing right now that suggests that any of these AI models that we're getting are even safe to be considered classic AI that we expect. None of them reason, AGI. None of them, like they're all LLMs, right? They're all these like large language models. They know how to take in information and spit back other information. They're getting more and more advanced, but as far as like general opinion is concerned, they're not going to get to that point. They're not going to just suddenly gain sentience. That's not something they're capable of doing in the iteration we currently have. So it seems a little bit, on the one hand, I'm like, it's a bit redundant, but on the other hand, I've always preached about future-proofing for the tech we're going to see. It's just that everything I've read so far suggests that we are so far away from actual AIs with reasoning powers that, like, is that really necessary?
Yeah. I think as a thought experiment, it's a good thing to have, simply because it's a matter of, like, you know, being prepared, as you say. But when it comes down to...
I mean, the article itself says in 2022, Google fired the engineer Blake Lemoine after he claimed that this company's AI model called Lambda was sentient and argued for its welfare internally. And that's an interesting thing as well. If so far, there's the cases of actual people talking to these large language models and thinking that they are sentient, even though it's proven that they're not. Like, that's just not how...
I recall this Blake Lemoine thing. He was actually a guest on Joe Rogan's podcast. He got fired after the podcast because of how just fervent he was about Lambda being sentient. It was so weird to watch.
It sounds so absurd.
Yeah, he was so attached to this thing. Like, all of a sudden, like, from his facial expressions, this guy was like, yeah, no, this thing is sentient. Like, it was quite wild.
I don't want to like say the talk down on that, right? I like to keep a really open mind and be like, well, I guess there's a part of me that goes, But maybe. I don't know. I didn't experience it. What do I know? Like, who am I to say that your experience is wrong? But on the other hand, every bit of logic and experience I've had in the world just tells me that that's not the case. But yeah, chat has a couple of interesting points that I think are very correct. One of them being that it 100% sounds like a tax write-off position. Yep. Whether or not it's worth it for the 50K a year salary that person might get, I don't know, maybe. And then also that it generates hype. It's a marketing move.
Exactly. Yeah, they're writing about it. We're talking about it. True.
That makes it sound like it's more advanced than it is, because some people won't care to look into it, and they'll just go, oh my god, they must be sentient to have a welfare manager. That's crazy. Right. And that's as far as they'll look into it. So yeah, I'm not sure, man.
I do feel like if we ever get to the point of having AGI, you know, like that is artificial general intelligence, which is the idea of having an AI that thinks like us, that can reason, that can create its own ideas, that then I think that like a typical welfare person would be so primitive to its needs that like it has to be completely inefficient. It would need an AI equivalent, you know? Because,
how as a human, like it's like you as a human trying to speak for a dog, right? Like how can you realistically understand its needs? Like you can guess. You can be like, well, you're just a basic creature. I can guess what you might need, but realistically, you don't know, do you? So, like, how can you do that for AI?
Bark.
True.
Bark, I say.
Bark, 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 bark.
Bark, bark.
So, yeah, and AIs would, theoretically, if the AI was everything science fiction tells us an AI is, the needs of an AI on a welfare level would be so incredibly complex. How could a human ever really comprehend them? It must be terrifying. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
And so yeah, that's that for that. Lastly, and this is pretty big news for me when I saw this, because I have family members who suffer from this disease. But yeah, the first CRISPR treatments are making their way to patients, this year. So apparently it's been a year since the gene editing treatment called Casgevy was approved for sickle cell disease and related blood cell disorders, and it's finally being infused into patients. So yeah, like for those who don't know what CRISPR is, it's what it says on the tin. It's gene editing. It's using an existing system in like our biology to essentially to snip your DNA and and put in new DNA in its place. It's safe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, God, I remember being in high school when CRISPR was being talked about. CRISPR is being heralded as like the new future / the disaster of the human race. If you're editing, designer babies was a phrase I saw over and over in my biology textbooks, even back in 2005 or whatever. So CRISPR's been around for a very long time and has been very controversial in that time. And I think the controversy has really died down over the last 10 years or so.
It does take a long time for clinical trials to make its way. Generally speaking, with the COVID vaccine aside, it takes so long for a clinical trial to go from inception to like clinical trials.
But in the case of CRISPR as well, where you have to test it on human participants, right? Like to really see if it is effective in the human gene code or whatever. So to do that ethical testing must be really hard to get approvals and like to do longitudinal studies and stuff like that. I can't even imagine how many hoops you must have to jump through.
Yeah.
To do it properly. I'll put that caveat here. To be doing it properly. And I'm sure there are places that don't do it properly, because that's always the case, right?
Yeah. And so they're going to be treating sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia.
My uncle had beta thalassemia, actually. That's really cool.
Right.
And not cool that he had it, but it can get fixed.
Yeah, you have to like completely edit your diet and stuff with that, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a really intense.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's like a red blood cell deformity, I think, right? Or something.
Yeah. So sickle cell disease, but with that, like essentially, if your blood becomes too acidic from exercising, then the shape of your blood cells like go from like that round shape that's easy to go through your blood cells to being like sickle shaped, and you can have blood clots, and like it can lead to like necrosis of limbs and stuff, and it's not good. I've lost so many, like a couple of uncles and stuff like from it, like that I never got to meet because they had this disease. So yeah, like this is ridiculous that like, I mean, obviously how much is it going to cost to have this CRISPR treatment? Like people are going to be trying to get, hand over fist trying to get this treatment.
And it will be gate kept. Like the cynical part of me says that it's never going to be available to the wider public unless they have some major philanthropy or there are enough developments elsewhere that this isn't a concern that they would just give it to the public. But I mean, what's the process like for doing that to like change your DNA in a way that it helps cure you from sickle cell? Is it like a really long process? Is it quite short? Is it lifelong drugs? Like, what's the deal?
I have no idea. It probably isn't lifelong drugs because what's likely going to happen?
What would be the point? Like,
yeah. I mean, I have no idea how this specific treatment called Casgevy works, so I couldn't tell you. I could only guess, and my guess is as good as anybody else's, really. But because what it's doing is that like it's using these probes essentially to find specific cells that have specific genes and then like change them.
Yeah, so it looks like they take a blood sample, obviously do all their stuff in the lab, and then inject it into the bone marrow essentially.
Yes.
Infuse it to the bone marrow. Oh no, they infuse and then it travels to the marrow. So I don't know what the exact process is, but I wonder how many times that has to happen for it to actually take on a wide scale.
Because like when it comes down to like how you treat like is it lymphoma, like you take a you take a bone marrow from like a healthy person and inject that into somebody else, and that can help to cure that leukemia, sorry, not lymphoma. Yeah. So maybe perhaps you don't necessarily need to have like their entire skeleton bone marrow to have this new gene. Just enough.
They self-replicate.
Exactly, just enough.
Well, like that's how viruses work, right? They just kind of alter part of. Well, maybe not viruses, but like cancer, for example, will alter your cells, and then actually no, that's not how cancer works at all, is it? Cancer just is its own thing that multiplies, right? Does it affect your actual cells and change your own?
So cancer is you, right? Like your cells just divide, and sometimes one cell can have a couple of issues with it that make it so that the next time it replicates, then those issues are compounded because like the more it replicates, the more like checks and balances get past it.
Does it change other cells, or is it its own self-replicating thing? Because that's how tumors are made, right? Is this let these cells replicate and then get bigger and bigger and bigger until they're a mass? But then do they affect and change the other cells? Because that's the deal with for example, the what's the thing called, like prions, right? Where that will change all of your proteins. That will change the way all your proteins fall. So that like goes through your system and changes you, as opposed to adding something.
So as far as I know, cancer cells don't recruit other cells to be cancerous, but what happens is that they just like they get bigger and bigger and bigger. They like slough off and like metastasize and just go in different places. And how it gets you is that because they just like grow, they move up and muscle into spaces they shouldn't be, and they they block off things and cause issues that way.
Parts,
exactly.
Yeah, sorry, that was a real tangent. I was just wondering how like this like how it influences the rest of your body and like the red blood cells and how it changes them, or if it's like a replication, like because your blood cells all eventually change, don't they? They eventually die
your red
off
blood so your if I remember correctly, your red blood cells have a half-life of 120 days. They die die really fast. Also, red blood cells don't actually have a nucleus either. So what this is doing, this is changing like where. But they come from
instructions to make them.
Exactly. So red blood cells, they come from cells, progenitor cells in the bone marrow. So this is to edit the bone marrow that then divides to make there's a massive chain of different cells that eventually differentiate into red blood cells. But like it's going to the root essentially and changing.
I guess I just wonder how it changes all of the roots. Like, because it's not just like one part of you. If you get that,
I
don't know. I need to research this. Sorry, I should just research it. I'm just fascinated by it. How does it spread? How does it propagate? How does it completely cure you and not just like locally cure you? I mean, very interesting.
Yeah, I imagine in that case then that it would transform all your bone marrow in that case to remove the bad gene. But what's cool about this is that this is just the beginning, and it's a really, really cool start. It's an amazing start because
it's absurd.
Yeah,
but this is what a lot of people complain about with playing God, because this is. Like,
this is massively playing God. This is huge. Like my aunt has suffered so much from sickle cell. She's had so many surgeries, hip replacements and stuff because of sickle cell. To have this now exist and who knows when it's going to actually become available, right? But like to have this so that all of a sudden she's able to exert herself going up the stairs without worrying about dying.
Live normally.
Exactly. So yeah, this is mad. And also, you know, like it does open the door for other things. If Casgevy becomes really popular, who's to say somebody else is gonna now make something to, like, you know, change your eye color with CRISPR or change your melanation with CRISPR. You can literally become black with CRISPR if you really wanted to, or the other way around.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about, like how easy is it to access the gear and knowledge you need in order to actually do this. Obviously, it's been years and years and years and years of like fine detailing exactly how to do this to get to the point where we can amend the cells for, you know, sickle cell. But yeah, now that that's known, how accessible is that kit to other companies who want to sell those options to you?
Oh my God.
That's the cyberpunk future. That is.
You could literally
that's what my
change.
book is about. That's literally what my book is. All of the
buy Leah's book when it gets published.
Maybe now I know what the basis of the technology is. They stole some CRISPR out there.
Yeah, I mean, you can literally change your hair texture with CRISPR. You can do anything with CRISPR. It's kind of ridiculous. Anyway, I saw this this article and it immediately made me go, huh, amazing.
Yeah. Really, I mean, for sure, when it's used for good like that, hell yeah.
How can we use it for evil?
Yeah, well, that will be what 15 other people are thinking right now. Or the one person's like, what else can I fix? How can I make money from this? And there will be a world where that is the case.
If I made the miners glow in the dark, then that way they'd never have to use headlights.
Oh, stop it. That's so what's going to happen. Well, yeah, but you could probably edit your eyeballs, right? And because eyeballs, the way that you see is, I've forgotten the terms for them. I'm so sorry, but you've got like black and white trichomes or something like that. Yeah, you got the ones that see black and white and ones that see color. Yes. So to amend certain parts of your eyeballs that you see better in the dark by adding different trichomes in to benefit people who are in certain jobs would be down the line something you might do. I don't know. But those are all small fish, all things considered. Like, could you maybe make a finger grow back eventually?
With CRISPR? Maybe. That becomes
not
a bit...
just CRISPR. Probably have to add more. But...
Because we know of so many creatures out there that are capable of doing this. You know, like lizards, you know, you can chop their tails off, axolotls, that kind of stuff. You can take the limbs off and that kind of thing. And you can isolate... I mean, I'm maybe if those genes are isolated, you could probably use CRISPR because, like, I am saying
that's what all that stuff is about, right? All of the experimentations and research we do on those animals is to figure out how... But was there something... I recently read a comment about how, well, maybe all of the US politics stuff going on at the moment. Yeah, they should shut down all of these useless research labs that are researching snails in the Amazon and all that useless stuff. And it's like, the amount of scientific breakthroughs you've had from looking into the way, like, secretions of animals that are barely ever found anywhere because they have certain genetic makeups and stuff. It's so valuable. What do you mean? It's so ignorant. It's so ignorant. It hurts.
It is. Yeah.
There was something that they found recently, and I can't remember what it is. It was just they researched a snail in like in a far off jungle somewhere, like a really rare snail, and something that they found within that is becoming very useful in medical science right now. And there's that kind of thing is not uncommon. But right, well, I have to go soon, so we should wrap this up.
All right, then in that case, take it away, Leah.
Yippee! This has been Gamers Week in Gaming, where me and Myre just all things gaming, not everything. Please don't jump down our throats if we didn't mention something, and please listen properly in case you missed the thing where we did in fact talk about, and you just missed it and are now going to jump in the comment section and go, but that's because X is because Y, when we started the conversation by talking about X because of Y. Anyway, this has been Gamers Week in Gaming. I am Leah. This is Myre. You can catch us every Monday live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Myre, and Spotify as well, and also now on YouTube. Yippee! Thanks for listening / watching, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.